Our project keeps growing, and we now finished the first preparation steps on our free queries. But now I would actually like to do our first big step in the project, and for this we need to understand the append feature Power BI Desktop provides. Now, what is append? Well, let's have a look at a very simple example. Let's say we have one query which looks like this. So we have a query with 4 columns: country, revenue, cost, and year. The country is always Germany, and we have different revenue and cost figures for different years. Then we have a second connection to another source file, our second query. In this query, we have the same column structure. So again, country, revenue, cost, and the year. But now we have the years from 17 up to 19. So in the end, we could say that instead of working with these two queries later throughout our project, it would be more convenient to combine this information. And how could we combine this information? Well, by basically turning these two queries into one single query. Because in the end, if we could create this new table, which would be our new query in the end, then, well, we kind of combine the information from two different queries into one new query. So in the end, what does append mean? Well, append simply means we add the rows from two different queries and combine it into a new query. That's all in the end, but to be able to do so, we have to guarantee a certain structure for our two queries, because the column amount and the names must be equal in both initial queries. As you saw, both queries have 4 columns, and each column is named equal in both queries. So in the first and the second query, we had country, revenue, cost, and year. So if you have the situation with 2 equal queries like this, then you can use this append feature. This was some theory. Let's now dive into append from a practical perspective. Back in our project, you can see that we have kind of the same situation that we just saw on the theory slides. Here we have 3 queries and not 2, so we have query 1, 2, and 3. But as you can see already, each query has the same amount and names for all columns. So if I scroll to the right here, we have age group start, span, male, female, and total. If I do this for the second query, we have start, span, male, female, and total. And the same thing is also true for the third query. As I said, this is important, otherwise the append feature won't work. So what do I want to do now? Well, now I would like to create a new query or a new table, which kind of includes all the information from these 3 initial queries. And to do that, we can go to our home ribbon again, and in the right part, we have this combine area. Here we have merge queries, which will be covered soon, and we have append queries. If you click onto the right part of this button here, you have 2 options: append queries and append queries as new. The difference here is that append queries would add the information from another query to the currently selected query, in our case, the first query. Append queries as new would create a new empty query or table, and then we could define the information that should be, well, stored in this table. I will show you both features, but I will show you these features by starting with append queries as new to create a new table here. So here we go. We now got 2 options. We can append the information from 2 tables or 3 or more tables. In our case, we actually have 3 tables here. So we could actually select this option. And now you can see that the first table is already selected. Now we could select the second one and the third one, and then we could click OK. This would be the approach you would typically follow. But here I would like to show you append queries as new and append queries. Therefore, we'll get started by appending 2 tables here. And here you can select the primary table. In our case, this would be the 1950 up to 1999 query. And the table that should then be appended to this primary table. And this would be the 2000 up till 2049 table. If we do so, you can see that we now created a new query. So we didn't apply any change to the initial queries. And this new query now contains the time information from 1950 up to 2049. I can show you this by clicking onto the filter here. And if we now click load more and scroll down to the bottom, you can see it ends here with 2049. We should maybe quickly change the name of this query here. I showed you this already, so I will change it here in the properties area. And I will just name it population combined, because it's the combined population of all our queries. Feel free to change the naming convention according to your preferences here. So with that, we appended 2 queries, but what about our third query here? Well, this should also be added, of course. Therefore, we'll again select our newly created query. Now go to Append Queries and now select not Append Queries is new, but Append Queries here. Now, very important, you can see the exclamation mark here. This means we are currently interacting with this population combined table. And here we can now say that we want to append one additional table to this query, and this is the population 2050 up to 2100 table. And by pressing OK, we again updated our information. And if you again go to the filter and now press Load More and scroll down to the bottom, you can see we now have the information from the year 1950 up to the year 2100 in our newly created query. One important note to conclude this lecture, in the applied steps here, you can see that we have 2 steps. Appended query is the step we just did. That's the step to append the third query. This one here, the source step, is the step referring to the initial 2 files right here. So if I double click onto the source, you can see that the source is not any external file here, as we have it in the initial queries, but the source points towards the primary and the secondary table. This means if I would now delete a query, which can be done by selecting the query, right-clicking it, and now hitting delete, like this, then you see that you get a hint that you cannot delete this query because the other query, the population combined query, refers to this one. Therefore, you have kind of a security mechanism, you could say. If your query is referred to by another query, it cannot be deleted. But please keep that in mind. We are not creating any kind of connection to an external file now here. This query entirely relies onto these 3 queries. By the way, you of course also can't delete this query. If you would try this here, you have the same message. So now that we finished our first big step for the course project, and we worked on the rows, we had a look at filters and on how to combine different queries, it's now time to work on the columns.